Hello friends, you're watching The Night Watchman, where every day you'll hear a brand new horror story that will send chills down your spine. But to keep bringing you these terrifying tales, we need your love and support. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now let's begin the story. Now we're Yadi. I'd been on the road for almost 11 hours when the dizziness started creeping in. That soft, numbing kind of fatigue that blurs headlights into halos and makes every passing mile feel the same. I'd left Little Rock just after lunch, heading west toward Amarillo for a work project that started the next morning. It was supposed to be a straight, easy drive. Music, gas stops, caffeine. Nothing to it. But by midnight, my vision was starting to swim, and the coffee I'd been nursing since Oklahoma City had gone cold. My name's Evan Cooper, 32 years old, surveyor for an engineering firm that contracts with small towns across the Midwest. Most of my life is measured in interstate exits, fuel receipts, and bad takeout. I'd been on so many stretches of two-lane highway that the country all started to look the same. Miles of grassland, the occasional diner, and forgotten motels with names that hadn't been relevant since the Carter administration. Still, that night felt different. The radio kept cutting in and out, cell signal was gone for half an hour at a time, and the road signs had turned from green to rusted metal, barely hanging on to their bolts. I was in the middle of nowhere, somewhere between Cimarron County and God knows where. "All right, man," I muttered to myself, fingers tight on the wheel. "You're done. Pull over before you kill yourself." The next exit had one of those faded blue gas station signs. Just the word food fuel lodging, half the letters flickering. I followed it off the highway, down a narrow frontage road lined with dying trees and gravel shoulders. That's when I saw it, a small gas station with one working pump, and just beyond it, a squat, one-story motel with a cracked green sign that read, "The Restland Motor Lodge." A single neon vacancy sign buzzed weakly in the night. I was too tired to care how it looked. I parked, grabbed my duffel, and stepped into the office. The place smelled faintly of mildew and cigarette smoke. Behind the counter sat a man who looked to be in his late 50s, heavy-set, with thinning gray hair and a name tag that said R.A.Y. He was wearing a faded plaid shirt, reading a newspaper like it was still 1985. He looked up when the doorbell chimed. "You driving through?" "Yeah," I said, rubbing my eyes. "Just need a room for the night." He gave a slow nod, typed something into an ancient computer that whirred like a dying fan. $68. Cash or card? "Card." He took it, slid it through an old reader that beeped twice before printing. "Room 9, down the right side. Don't park in front of the ice machine. It leaks. Got it." I tried to smile, but my voice came out dry. "Wi-Fi?" Ray huffed a laugh. "If it's working, it's a miracle." "Fair enough." He slid the keycard across the counter, then added quietly, "Try to lock your door." "Handle's a little loose on that one." That last line hit me weird, but I brushed it off. Small-town places always had quirks. Room 9 was like every other cheap motel I'd ever stayed in. Beige walls, stale carpet, a floral bedspread that had long lost its color. The TV was the old box kind. The air smelled faintly of bleach, and the heater rattled like a tin can full of bolts. Still, the bed looked like heaven. I tossed my bag on the chair, took a quick shower, and collapsed face first onto the mattress. I didn't even remember closing my eyes. What woke me was the tapping. At first, I thought it was part of a dream. Soft, rhythmic, distant. But as consciousness slowly crept back, I realized it was coming from the window. Tap, tap, tap. I froze. The curtains were drawn tight, thick enough that not even a sliver of the outside light could get through. My room was dim, the only glow coming from the green numbers on the alarm clock, 2:47 a.m. The tapping came again, deliberate, slow. I sat up, heart thudding in my chest. For a moment, I didn't breathe. Maybe it's a tree branch, I thought, or a bird, but there weren't any trees near the windows. I'd noticed that when I parked. Just open lot, gravel, and a field beyond. Tap, tap, tap. I whispered to myself, "What the hell?" The sound stopped. I stayed perfectly still, eyes locked on the curtain, waiting for it to start again. But minutes passed, nothing. just the soft hum of the heater and the pounding in my ears. Finally, I lay back down, forcing my muscles to relax. Then came the knock. 3 heavy thuds at the door. I sat bolt upright, adrenaline surging through me. Jesus Christ! The knock came again, louder this time. I swung my legs off the bed, padding quietly across the carpet. The floorboards creaked under my weight. "Who is it?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. Silence. I reached the door and looked through the peephole, but saw nothing. Not darkness, just black. As if someone had pressed their finger right against it. My stomach flipped. I backed away slowly. "Hey, who's out there?" No response. I stepped toward the window and, with a trembling hand, pulled the curtain back just a few inches. A man stood outside. He was facing the door, his head tilted slightly downward. I could only see his side, dark jacket, jeans, boots, but he was close. Too close, maybe 6 inches from the door. He wasn't moving. I let the curtain fall back into place, pulse hammering in my throat. "What do you want?" I shouted. Nothing. The stillness was unbearable. I waited, not daring to move, every nerve on fire. Then after maybe 5 minutes, the pressure lifted. The silence changed. It's hard to explain, but I felt when he was gone. I waited another 10 minutes before I finally allowed myself to breathe normally again. Somehow, eventually, I drifted back to sleep. When I woke up, sunlight was pouring through the curtains. For a moment, the fear felt like a bad dream. Until I saw the door. Right near the latch, the paint was chipped and splintered. Fresh marks that hadn't been there before. I walked closer. Someone had tried to pry it open with something thin. My stomach turned cold. I rushed outside. In the daylight, the gouges were obvious. Around the lock. Down the edge of the doorframe. I turned toward my car and my heart sank again. The driver's side door had matching marks. Scratches, bent metal, like someone had tried to wedge it open. "Jesus," I muttered, scanning the empty lot. Only 2 other cars were parked there. No movement, no sound. I opened my door, half expecting everything to be gone, but the inside of my car was untouched. That was almost worse. It meant whoever had been there didn't want my stuff. They wanted me. I started the engine and drove straight to the office. Ray was behind the counter, sipping coffee from a styrofoam cup. He looked up when he saw me. "Sleep all right?" I stared at him. "Someone tried to break into my room last night?" He didn't even look surprised. "You sure? There are marks on the door." "And my car," he sighed, rubbing his temples. "We've had a couple kids come through lately. Local troublemakers. I'll take a look." His tone was so casual it made my skin crawl. "You don't have cameras or anything?" "Not working," he said. "Hasn't been for years." I just stood there. He stared back, unbothered, like this was routine. Maybe it was. I turned to leave. As I walked out, he called after me. "You get back on the highway, stick to the main route. Don't stop around here again." I looked over my shoulder. "Why?" He shrugged. "People go missing out here sometimes, just the way it is." The drive back to the highway felt endless. Every mile marker looked the same. Every shadow on the side of the road made my pulse jump. When I finally merged onto I-40, I exhaled so hard it hurt. For the next few hours, I kept glancing at my rearview mirror, expecting to see headlights following too close. But the road stayed empty. A week later, back in Oklahoma City, I couldn't shake it. I even looked up Wrestling Motor Lodge online. Nothing. Not a listing, not a map pin, not even a review. It was like the place didn't exist. Sometimes I wonder if I imagined it, if exhaustion made me hallucinate the man outside my door. But then I look at the car. The faint scratches near the lock still there. The metal slightly warped. And I know it was real. I still travel for work, but I haven't stayed in another roadside motel since. I'd rather sleep sitting up in a gas station parking lot than risk another night like that, because I can still hear it sometimes, when I'm alone in a strange place, half asleep, the hum of the highway outside, tap, tap, tap. And I know somewhere out there, maybe near mile marker 19, there's still a man standing in the dark, waiting for someone too tired to care. Story 2. I've spent most of my adult life on the road, Sales routes, training runs, trade shows, you name it, I've driven to it. After 10 years behind the wheel, the highways have started to feel more like home than my actual apartment in Kansas City. The hum of the tires, the distant glow of gas stations, the endless stretch of asphalt, it all became part of my routine. But that night in Tennessee changed the way I'll ever look at roadside motels again. I'd been driving since early morning, heading back from a company conference in Birmingham. My job with a logistics firm meant long hours, late arrivals, and a constant push to meet the next deadline. I was supposed to make it all the way to Paducah, but somewhere between Jackson and the state line, the caffeine wore off and the road started to blur. My mother always said fatigue could kill faster than alcohol, and as my eyelids grew heavier, I decided to listen to her voice for once. That's when I saw it, a flickering sign just off the exit ramp. Willow Bend Motel, vacancy. The neon buzzed weakly against the night sky, half the letters burned out so it looked like Will Be in Motel. It wasn't one of those chain places. No Comfort Inn, no Holiday Lodge. Just a squat, two-story rectangle painted a dull yellow, with a gravel lot and a Coke machine humming by the office door. I pulled in, parked under the one working streetlight, and shut off the engine. The air was muggy, thick with the smell of pine and rain-soaked asphalt. A moth the size of my thumb thudded against the windshield before I climbed out, slinging my duffel over my shoulder. Inside the lobby, the hum of an old vending machine filled the silence. Behind the counter sat a woman who couldn't have been more than 25. Her name tag read Lacey. She had tired eyes and a faded tattoo peeking out from under her sleeve. "Evening," she said without looking up from her phone. "Evening, not an hours," I replied. "You got a room available?" She glanced at the computer. "Single bed? Non-smoking?" "Yeah, just for the night." "$79 plus tax," she said. I slid my card across the counter, and she processed it with the slow, unhurried rhythm of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. "Room 117, she said, handing me the key card. "Checkout's at 11, ice machine's busted, and the breakfast is just coffee and prepackaged donuts. Wi-Fi's hit or miss," I chuckled. "That's all right. I'm just planning to crash." "Trust me," she muttered. "That's all most people do here." Something about the way she said that made me pause, but exhaustion won over curiosity. The hallway to my room smelled faintly of mildew and carpet cleaner. The wallpaper was peeling near the baseboards, and one of the ceiling lights flickered in an almost rhythmic pattern, like it was breathing. I found 117 at the far end, just past the vending nook. When I opened the door, I was hit with that familiar motel smell, a mix of stale air, detergent, and something faintly metallic. But the bed looked clean enough, the TV worked, and the AC gave off a steady hum that filled the silence. I kicked off my shoes, answered a few late-night work emails, then sank into the bed. The sheets were scratchy, but at that point, even a rock would have felt like luxury. It must have been around 1 a.m. when the phone rang. At first, I thought it was my cell vibrating on the nightstand, but no, it was the beige landline by the bed, the one hotels keep for front desk calls. I frowned, half asleep, and picked it up. "Hello?" A man's voice answered, flat, emotionless. "Sir, I need you to come to the front desk." Right now, my stomach tightened. What's this about?" No response, just breathing, calm, deliberate, before the same voice said, firmer this time, "Come down to the desk." Now then, the line went dead. I sat there, staring at the phone. I hadn't seen anyone else working the front desk when I checked in. Just Lacey. Maybe she had a coworker for the night shift. But why would they call me at 1 a.m. with no explanation? Still half groggy, I threw on my sneakers and stepped outside. The air was heavy, the only sound the buzzing of insects around the flickering streetlight. The office door was locked when I got there. Through the glass, I could see the counter, the chair, and the computer screen still glowing, but no one inside. I knocked once. "Hello? Someone called me down here." No answer. I knocked again, harder. "Hey, anyone working?" The silence was thick, almost unnatural. I cupped my hands around the glass, peering into the dim lobby. Everything looked untouched. No movement, no shadows. I muttered, "Screw this," and headed back toward my room, trying to shake off the unease. When I got back, I locked the door, sat on the edge of the bed, and grabbed my phone to check the time. 1:14 a.m. That's when the phone rang again. I froze, staring at it. The same harsh, mechanical tone filled the room. With a sigh, I picked it up. "Look, whoever this is," the voice cut me off. "You didn't come down." It was the same man, same monotone, only sharper this time. "I did," I snapped. There was nobody there. "You didn't come," he repeated. "You need to come now." Something in his tone made my skin crawl, like it wasn't a request, like it was a command. "Who is this?" I demanded. The line crackled softly, then went dead again. I slammed the receiver down and yanked the cord from the wall. "Try calling now, asshole," I muttered. I climbed back into bed, angry but more tired than scared. Still, I double-checked the locks, even jammed a chair under the handle. 10 minutes later, I was just drifting off when I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. 3 soft knocks on the door. I bolted upright, heart pounding. Another knock, louder this time. I got up slowly, my throat dry. "Who is it?" I called. No answer. I waited, every muscle tensed. Then I heard it, the faint sound of footsteps retreating down the walkway outside. I hurried to the window, pulled the curtain aside just enough to look out. Under the dim glow of the hallway light, I saw a man's back, or at least, what I thought was a man. Broad shoulders, dark jacket. He turned the corner out of sight. "Hey!" I yelled, but he didn't stop. I cracked the door open just an inch, peering out. The walkway was empty now. The only movement came from the bugs swarming the light fixture. I shut the door, locked it again, and didn't sleep the rest of the night. By morning, the place looked painfully normal. Sunlight spilled across the parking lot, kids ran to cars, and someone was filling a cooler with ice outside. I dragged myself to the office with dark circles under my eyes. Lacey was there, hair tied up, sipping coffee. "Morning," she said. "Sleep all right?" "Not really," I admitted. "Hey, was someone else working last night? A guy maybe?" She blinked, confused. "Nope, just me." "Why?" I told her everything. The calls, the voice, the knocking. Her smile faded. "That wasn't me," she said quietly. "And there's no night shift here. I'm the only one who works past midnight." My stomach turned. "So, you didn't call anyone?" She shook her head. "You're not the first to say something weird happened in that room either." "What do you mean?" Lacey looked around, lowering her voice. "A few months back, a woman checked into 117, said she kept getting calls too. We had maintenance check the line. It wasn't even connected to the switchboard. The cable in the wall was cut years ago." I felt a chill race through my chest. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," she said. "That phone shouldn't even work." I stood there trying to make sense of it when a man entered the lobby, older, in a denim jacket, maybe local. He overheard us and gave me a long look. "You stayed in 117, he asked. "Yeah, why?" His expression darkened. "That used to be the manager's room, back before they reopened the place." "What happened?" I asked. He sighed. "Guy ran some kind of underground thing back in the 90s. Drugs, girls, bad business. One of his victims turned up dead, right there in 117. They said she'd been calling for help on that phone, but the line had been cut. By the time anyone found her, she was gone." I felt my stomach knot. "And they still rent that room out?" "New owners. Probably don't even know." I turned toward Lacey. She looked shaken, staring at the desk like she wanted to say more but didn't dare. "Sometimes," the man added softly, "folks passing through say they still get those calls." Always the same voice, always asking them to come down to the front desk. I didn't say a word after that. I packed my bag, left my key on the counter, and didn't even look back as I drove away from Willow Bend. But that night, somewhere along the interstate, my phone buzzed in the passenger seat, an unknown number. When I answered, the line was silent at first. Then a familiar, flat voice spoke. "You didn't come down." The line went dead. I pulled over on the shoulder, heart hammering, staring into the dark fields stretching out beyond the road. There was nothing there, just endless miles of highway and wind whispering through the trees. Since that night, I've never stayed in another roadside motel. I'll sleep in my car, under a bridge, anywhere but one of those two-story boxes. Because sometimes what calls from the front desk isn't alive anymore. And when I close my eyes on lonely highways, I still hear that voice. Calm, patient, waiting. Come down to the front desk. Now. Story 3. I never thought a weekend getaway could turn into the worst memory of my life. I wasn't even supposed to be in Mississippi that summer. I had planned to spend July working overtime, saving up for a new apartment, but Lena, my girlfriend of 3 years, had other plans. She'd been pushing for a short trip, something quiet and cheap to get us away from the grind. We don't need Miami or Vegas, she told me one night, her voice soft over the phone. Just somewhere peaceful where we can breathe. Lena was a registered nurse at a small urgent care clinic in Birmingham. The pandemic years had aged her. Dark circles under her eyes, jumpy around loud noises, always on call. I was an IT contractor for a logistics company, working 12-hour days in a gray cubicle, staring at ticket queues that never seemed to end. Between her shifts and my deadlines, our relationship had become a long series of maybe next weeks. So when I found a small coastal town on Google Maps called Bay Ridge, right on the Gulf, I thought it'd be perfect. Quiet, affordable, and close enough to the beach that we could walk there. I booked a 3-night stay at a roadside motel called the Palmetto Inn. The photos online showed pastel-colored doors, palm trees painted on the sign, and a promise of southern charm and comfort. The reviews were mixed, but it looked clean enough. I told myself it'd be fine. We left Birmingham early Friday morning, our bags stuffed with swimsuits, snacks, and sunscreen. The drive took about 5 hours. The interstate eventually gave way to 2-lane back roads that twisted through pine forests and flat stretches of marshland. The air got heavier the closer we got to the coast. By the time we pulled into the parking lot, the sun was melting into the horizon. The Palmetto Inn looked exactly like I'd pictured. 2 stories, U-shaped, with faded turquoise railings and humming vending machines at both ends. The pool open sign buzzed faintly even though the pool looked half-drained. Lena stretched as she got out of the car, brushing her brown hair off her neck. "Okay," she said, grinning. "It's not the Ritz, but it'll do." "Hey," I said, grabbing our bags. $75 a night and walking distance to the water. That's a win. We checked in at the front desk. The clerk was an older woman named Margie, wearing thick glasses and a cardigan despite the heat. Her voice had that soft southern drawl that made everything sound polite. "Y'all here for the weekend?" she asked, sliding a clipboard across the counter. "Yeah," I said, signing. "Just trying to escape work for a few days." "Well," she smiled, "you came to the right place. Beaches are quiet this time of year. Just watch for the mosquitoes. And don't mind our night maintenance guy if you see him around. He keeps odd hours." "Maintenance guy?" Lena asked. "Yeah, name's Earl. Older fella. Keeps to himself mostly. Bit strange, but harmless. I didn't think much of it at the time. Our room was on the 2nd floor, room 204, facing the parking lot. The place was plain but clean. 2 queen beds, a small TV, the faint smell of bleach and ocean salt in the air. I cracked the window just enough to hear the distant hum of traffic. That first night was peaceful. We grabbed dinner at a small seafood shack by the pier, walked the beach barefoot, and sat on the sand watching the lights from boats drift across the water. For the first time in months, Lena laughed without it sounding forced. Saturday morning came bright and hot. We spent most of the day out. Brunch, paddle boards, lazy naps under a beach umbrella. When we got back, the motel parking lot was half full. A few bikers, some tourists, and a truck parked crookedly near the vending machine. It was late when things started to change. We'd just gotten back from dinner, shrimp tacos and cheap margaritas, when Lena decided she wanted ice for her drink. The motel's ice machine was down near the stairwell, right beside the vending machine. "I'll go grab it," she said, slipping on her sandals. "I can go," I offered, already half asleep on the bed. She rolled her eyes. "I'm fine. It's 30 seconds away." "All right," I said, yawning. "Don't get kidnapped." She laughed and shut the door behind her. I remember the TV flickering in the dark, some old movie playing, and then, maybe a minute later, the bathroom door creaked open. Lena stepped out, towel wrapped around her, eyes wide like she'd seen something awful. "What's wrong?" I asked, sitting up. Her hands trembled slightly. There's someone down there. What do you mean? By the ice machine. This man, he just stood there when I walked in. He didn't move, didn't say anything, just stared at me. When I walked out, he started following me. My stomach tightened. Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure, Nick. Her voice cracked. He was right behind me when I got to the stairs. I didn't wait for the elevator. I ran up. What did he look like? Older, maybe late 50s, tall, skinny. He had this gray goatee and a baseball cap, and his clothes looked filthy, like he'd been sleeping outside. I got up, heart pounding. Stay here. I'll check. She grabbed my arm. Nick, don't. But I was already out the door. The hallway was empty. The hum of the vending machine filled the silence. I peered over the railing down toward the ice machine. No one there. Just an empty bucket left on the floor. After a minute, I gave up and went back inside. Nothing, I said, locking the door behind me. Maybe he went to his room. Lena didn't look convinced. I swear he was following me. He didn't even have a bucket. I believe you, I said softly. Maybe he's drunk. Or just some creepy guest. Let's keep the door locked tonight, okay? She nodded but didn't sleep much. I could feel her tense beside me every time a floorboard creaked or someone walked by outside. By morning, things felt normal again. Sunlight has a way of making you doubt your own fears. We decided to explore the town, grab breakfast at a diner nearby. Halfway through our pancakes, Lena froze mid-bite. Nick, she whispered, eyes fixed on the window. That's him. I turned. Across the street, leaning against a lamppost, was a man matching her description. Thin, gray goatee, baseball cap pulled low. He wasn't looking directly at us, but he was close enough that it felt deliberate. You sure? I asked quietly. She nodded. Positive. We left cash on the table and walked out, trying not to draw attention. My mind was racing. Maybe he was staying at the motel too. Maybe it was coincidence. But when we turned a corner, I glanced back, and he was following. That day turned into a blur of paranoia. Every time we looked over our shoulders, we saw him. By the marina, outside a souvenir shop, near the beach parking lot, always a few paces away. Never saying a word. At one point, Lena grabbed my hand so tightly her nails dug into my skin. Why is he following us? She whispered, voice trembling. I don't know, I said, scanning the crowd. Let's lose him. We ducked through alleys, through back streets lined with fishing shacks and gift shops. For a while, we thought we'd shaken him off. We sat at a seafood joint near the pier, trying to calm down. Our food came. The sound of laughter and seagulls filled the air. And then across the street, there he was again, just standing, watching. Lena's breath hitched. Nick, he's right there. I see him. My fork trembled in my hand. If he comes any closer, I'm calling the cops. But he didn't come closer. He stood there for several long minutes, then slowly walked away. That night, we packed our bags, ready to check out early the next morning. I tried to convince Lena to switch to another motel, but she just wanted to get through one more night. It was around 10 p.m. when we walked through the lobby. Margie, the clerk, wasn't there, just an empty chair and the faint buzz of the ceiling light. That's when I saw him again. He was sitting in the corner, half hidden behind a fake potted plant. Same cap, same wiry frame. His eyes followed us as we crossed the lobby. Lena gripped my arm. Nick. I see him, I muttered. We hurried into the elevator. As the doors began to close, I watched him stand up. When we reached the second floor, Lena ran to our room. She looked through the peephole and whispered, He's out there. My chest tightened. Where? Right in front of our door. That was it. I yanked the chair away from the handle and swung the door open. He was there, 10 feet away. Hey, I snapped. What the hell do you think you're doing? He didn't answer. His face twitched, eyes dark and unfocused. You've been following us all day, I said, stepping closer. What do you want? He slowly reached into his jacket. For a second, I thought it was a phone. Then I heard the crackle, sharp, electric, a stun gun. Back off, I shouted, but he lunged. The sound of electricity lit the air as I stumbled backward, slamming the door shut. Lena screamed. I grabbed her phone, calling the front desk, but no one answered. I ran for the stairs, heart hammering, shouting for help. When I hit the lobby, Margie was standing there, confused. "Sir, what's wrong?" "There's a man upstairs. He tried to tase me." Her face went pale. She picked up the phone immediately, dialing 911. I stayed there, trembling, until police arrived about 10 minutes later. 2 officers went upstairs. I watched them through the glass doors as they swept the hallway. Radios crackling. After what felt like forever, one came back down. "Sir," he said, "there's no one up there. Just an empty hallway." "That's impossible," I said. "He was right outside our room." "We checked every door, every stairwell. No one matching your description." I looked at Lena. She was shaking, eyes glassy. The cops took our statements, promised to patrol the area, and left. Margie gave us another room on the first floor for the night, said she'd refund the next day. But neither of us slept. Every sound outside made us flinch. The next morning, we left before sunrise. As we loaded our bags into the car, I noticed something. The door to the maintenance closet near the stairwell was slightly ajar. Inside, I could see a mop bucket, some tools, and an old baseball cap hanging on a hook. Margie stepped out of the office just then. "Y'all heading out early?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "We just need to get home." She nodded. "Well, I hope everything was all right." "Earl didn't give you any trouble, did he?" "Earl?" "Our night maintenance guy. He's been gone since Thursday, though. Didn't even pick up his paycheck. Strange old bird, I didn't answer." I just looked at that hat, swaying slightly from the draft of the open door. Lena gripped my hand as we got in the car. Neither of us said a word for the entire drive home. I tried to move on after that. I went back to work. Lena picked up extra shifts, but sometimes, late at night, when I close my eyes, I still hear that faint electric crackle right behind me. Story 4. I never thought a job at a roadside motel would amount to anything more than a paycheck and a quiet place to think about my life. I was 23 then, stuck somewhere between trying to be an adult and not knowing how. College hadn't worked out the way I hoped. I'd done 2 years at a community college in Kansas City before dropping out when my dad got sick. After he passed, I drifted. Worked odd jobs, a warehouse, a grocery store, a delivery gig that wrecked my car, until I finally landed at a place called Pine Hollow Lodge, a small, aging motel off Route 60 in southern Missouri. It wasn't fancy. Faded green shingles, a sagging neon sign that buzzed even when it wasn't lit, and a gravel parking lot that stayed half empty except for long-haul truckers and families who'd taken the wrong exit. But the owner, a laid-back guy named Marvin, didn't ask for much. "Just show up, stay awake, and don't steal," he said when he hired me. That was good enough for me. The job was simple. Check in guests, keep the coffee fresh, and make sure nobody tried sneaking in without paying. The night shifts were long, but quiet. Just me. A lobby that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and burnt coffee, and the hum of the soda machine. For the first few months, it was peaceful. I'd read, scroll my phone, listen to late-night radio. Sometimes I'd sit behind the desk, watching headlights drift by on the highway, thinking about my life, or lack of one. The world felt distant at 2 a.m. inside Pine Hollow, like I was sealed in a bubble no one else remembered existed. But that peace didn't last. It happened in early July. The air was thick and hot, the kind of humidity that sticks to your neck even after sundown. The cicadas outside were so loud you could hear them through the glass doors. I clocked in at 11 that night. The evening clerk, Linda, was waiting for me behind the counter, flipping through the logbook. "Slow night?" I asked, setting my backpack down. She nodded. "Yeah, just 3 check-ins. Room 104, 112, and 1 walk-in. Some guy in 217. Paid cash." "Cash, huh?" I said, raising an eyebrow. "Yeah, he looked normal enough. Quiet type. Still..." She trailed off and gave a small shrug. "Something about him gave me the creeps. You'll see what I mean if he comes back down." I laughed it off, but I could tell by the way she said it that she meant it. Linda wasn't the type to spook easy. She'd been there 10 years, through every kind of weird night you could imagine. After she left, the silence set in. The clock above the desk ticked softly, and the TV in the corner played some old crime show rerun. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat down, half watching the show, half daydreaming about moving somewhere new. Denver maybe, or Seattle. I was getting tired of the same roads, the same stories, the same tired faces checking in and out without ever leaving anything behind but key cards and coffee stains. By 1:45 a.m., I was fighting to keep my eyes open. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. They came from the east hallway. Slow, deliberate, heavy, like someone dragging their boots across the carpet. I straightened up, instinctively glancing at the monitor feed on the computer. The hallway camera was grainy, but sure enough, someone was walking toward the lobby. The glass doors slid open a moment later. A man stepped in. He was maybe mid-30s, average height, short brown hair, wearing a plain dark t-shirt and jeans. He looked like someone you'd pass at a gas station. Not threatening, just tired. But there was something strange in the way he stood there, staring at me before saying a word. "Hey," he finally said. His voice was quiet, almost polite. "The air conditioner in my room isn't working." I pushed myself up from the chair. "Which room are you in?" 217, he said quickly, like he'd rehearsed it. I typed his number into the system. Sure enough, room 217, one night, cash payment, checked in around 7:40 p.m. No name attached beyond the initials JT. "Is it not turning on?" I asked. "Or just not cooling enough?" He scratched the back of his neck, eyes darting past me to the lobby doors. "I don't know. It just feels off. Could you come take a look? Maybe show me how it works?" Normally, I'd tell him to wait for maintenance in the morning, but Marvin hated when guests complained. Plus, the guy didn't seem dangerous, just weirdly nervous. "Sure," I said, grabbing the master key card from the drawer. "Let's check it out." We took the elevator together. The old lift moaned as it crawled upward. I tried to fill the silence. "You passing through?" I asked. "Or staying a few nights?" "Just tonight," he said. "Cool. Headed somewhere in particular?" He didn't look at me. "Nowhere that matters." That was strange. I let it go. The second floor was dim, half the lights flickered, and the air smelled faintly of mildew. The carpet muffled our steps as we walked down the hallway. When we reached 217, he swiped his card, then stepped aside, motioning for me to go first. I hesitated but went in. The room was spotless. The bed neatly made, the desk empty, the TV dark. There was no luggage, no open suitcase, nothing. The air was cool. The AC unit under the window was running just fine, humming steadily. "See?" I said, kneeling to check the controls. "It's working fine." Maybe it just needed a minute to kick in. When I turned around, I noticed he hadn't entered the room. He was standing in the doorway, half in shadow, watching me. "You can feel it," I said, forcing a polite smile. "It's cooling now." He nodded slowly but didn't move. "You, want to try it yourself?" He shook his head. "No, that's fine, but you're not leaving." At first I thought I misheard him. "What?" His expression didn't change. "You're not leaving." I felt my stomach twist. "Sir, I don't know what you mean. Stay right there." He stepped fully into the room now, closing the door behind him with a soft click. Every instinct in my body screamed that something was wrong. "Look, man," I said, keeping my voice steady. "If you need help with something else, I can call someone." He shook his head again. "You shouldn't have come up here." That sentence froze me. My hands started to tremble. I took a step back toward the AC unit, pretending to check the settings while my right hand slid into my pocket. My phone was there. I gripped it hard. "Sir," I said quietly, "I'm gonna step out and—" He moved. Fast. Not toward me, toward the peephole on the door. He pressed his face against it, breathing hard, like he was listening for something on the other side. Then, without looking at me, he said, "They followed me here." "What?" He turned his head slightly. His eyes looked hollow, bloodshot. "Don't you hear them?" They never stopped walking. Down the hall. Back and forth. Back and forth, I didn't hear anything. Just the hum of the AC and the pounding of my own heart. "Sir, I think you might need—" "Shh." He raised a finger to his lips. "If you open that door, they'll see you too." That was it. I was done playing along. I took one slow step toward the phone on the nightstand, pretending to adjust my sleeve. Then I pressed 911 on my cell, hit speaker, and slid it behind my leg. 911, what's your emergency? A voice said. The man's eyes widened. He looked straight at me, then bolted. He yanked the door open and sprinted into the hallway barefoot, running faster than I thought possible. I followed, yelling for him to stop, but he was already gone. The hallway was empty. The elevator lights flickered between floors, but the stairwell door was swinging open. By the time the cops arrived, he'd vanished. Room 217 was empty. No bag, no toothbrush, nothing. The sheets were untouched. When they ran the ID he'd used at check-in, it came back to a dead man, someone who died 2 years earlier in a car crash near Tulsa. They searched the motel property, the nearby woods, even checked the gas stations off Route 60. No one ever found him. I quit Pine Hollow a month later. I told Marvin it was burnout, but the truth was I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd been chosen for something that night, or spared. Sometimes I'll still drive by old motels late at night when I'm on the highway. The neon signs flicker, the parking lots sit half empty, and I'll glance up at the second floor windows. Every now and then, I swear I see someone standing there. A man in a dark t-shirt watching me. And the worst part? He never looked like a monster. He looked like anyone. Just another tired traveler standing under the buzzing glow of a motel sign, waiting for someone to show him how the air conditioner works. Story 5, I never planned on staying at a place like Pine Hollow Lodge. Back then, I was 26, drifting through one of those restless phases where you don't really know where you're headed in life, but feel like you have to keep moving. I'd quit my job at a warehouse in Tulsa after my boss started cutting hours and piling on work at the same time. I didn't have a real plan, just a vague idea of taking a cross-country trip with my buddy Mark before figuring things out. Mark and I had been friends since high school. He was the kind of guy who laughed at everything, never took life too seriously, and had an uncanny ability to stretch a dollar until it screamed. I used to admire that about him, until that night. We left Oklahoma in early June with nothing but a beat-up Ford Escape, a cooler full of Red Bulls and gas station sandwiches, and a playlist that jumped from Tom Petty to Metallica without warning. For nearly 2 weeks, we drove through small towns, camped near rivers, slept in cheap motels, and ate whatever we could afford. It was freeing at first, but after 3,000 miles, the smell of old upholstery, stale food, and constant sweat started to wear me down. By the time we were on the drive back home, I was running on fumes. That day, I had been behind the wheel for almost 14 hours straight. My vision was getting blurry, and the yellow lines on the highway had started to blend into one endless streak. Mark was leaned back in the passenger seat, scrolling through his phone. "Dude," he said, rubbing his eyes, "let's just call it a night. I'll find us a place to crash." I shot him a tired look. "Mark, if you pick another Roach motel, I swear I'm sleeping in the car." He laughed. "Relax, man. I'll find somewhere decent." "Decent," I repeated. "You said that last time, and we ended up in that place with the bloodstain on the carpet." "That was ketchup," he said, grinning. "Probably." I groaned, but honestly, I was too exhausted to argue. My head felt heavy, my arms like lead. "Fine. But seriously, no shady motels this time." He scrolled for a few seconds, his phone's glow reflecting in the dark cabin. "Got one. Pine Hollow Lodge. Says it's just off Route 19, 15 minutes from here. Cheap, but it's got decent reviews." "Decent reviews from who?" I muttered. He ignored that. "Come on, man. $40 and split in half? That's 20 each. It's perfect." We exited the highway and followed a narrow 2-lane road surrounded by woods. There weren't any streetlights, just the occasional road sign and the faint hum of insects outside the windows. The GPS said the town was called Eagle's Rest, though calling it a town was generous. We passed maybe 4 buildings total, a shuttered diner, a boarded-up post office, and a gas station with a flickering sign that said open 24 hours, even though it was clearly abandoned. "This place is dead," I said quietly. Mark smirked. "It's peaceful. You're just paranoid." We turned down a gravel road lined with tall pine trees that loomed over us like dark sentinels. After a mile or so, A faint neon glow appeared ahead. A sign read, Pine Hollow Lodge, though half the letters were dark, leaving it to read, Pine Hollow Gay. The building itself was one long strip of connected rooms, all ground level, with peeling paint and cracked windows. A faded Coke machine sat outside the office door, and a single bug-smeared lamp flickered above it. The parking lot was mostly empty except for 3 cars, 2 pickups and an old Crown Victoria that looked abandoned. "Dude," I said, tightening my grip on the steering wheel. "No way." "It's fine," Mark said. "Look, someone's staying here." "Yeah, probably the serial killer who runs the place." He laughed and got out before I could stop him. "You worry too much, man." I sighed, grabbed my backpack, and followed him to the front office. Inside, the air smelled like old cigarettes and something sour, like damp wood. The clerk behind the counter was a thin man with slicked-back gray hair and yellowed eyes that didn't quite blink right. He didn't say anything when we entered, just stared at us for a few seconds before muttering, "Room or rooms?" "Just one," Mark said cheerfully. "2 beds." The man nodded, grabbed a key from a rack, and slid it across the counter. It was an actual metal key attached to a cracked green tag that said, Room 7. "That's 42, he said flatly. Mark handed him 2 20s and a 5. The man didn't offer a receipt. He didn't even look up as we left. Outside, the cicadas were loud. The humid air stuck to my skin as we walked to Room 7, halfway down the row. The door creaked when I opened it. Inside, the room looked like something out of a forgotten decade. 2 twin beds with floral bedspreads, an old TV sitting on a wooden dresser, and a lamp that flickered when I turned it on. The air smelled faintly of mildew and something metallic underneath. Mark flopped down on the bed nearest the window. "Home, sweet home." "Home condemned home," I muttered, locking the door and checking the bathroom. The tiles were cracked and the mirror was fogged with age. At least the toilet worked. I sat down on the edge of my bed, rubbing my eyes. I was too tired to even eat. Mark turned toward me, half asleep already. "Don't stay up watching that true crime crap again. You'll freak yourself out." Yeah, I said, lying back. Within minutes, his snoring filled the room. I lay there staring at the ceiling fan, spinning unevenly, the hum of insects outside mixing with the faint buzz of the neon sign. But after a while, my mouth got dry. I realized I hadn't had water since we stopped for gas hours ago. Against my better judgment, I decided to go find a vending machine. Outside, the night was still and thick with humidity. My footsteps crunched softly over gravel as I made my way toward the office. Sure enough, the old Coke machine was humming faintly beside the door. I fed $1 into it, pressed the button for water. Nothing. The machine made a weak clicking sound but didn't dispense anything. "Come on," I muttered, smacking the side. That's when I heard it, a soft crunch of gravel behind me. I froze. Turning slightly, I saw someone standing near the corner of the building, half hidden in shadow. A man, tall, thin, maybe in his 40s or 50s. His clothes were filthy, his hair long and stringy. His head was tilted slightly like he was studying me. Hey, I said, forcing a nervous laugh. "You good, man?" No answer. He just stared. My stomach tightened. I took a small step back toward the room. "Okay, well, have a good night." Still nothing. His eyes didn't leave me. As I turned away, I heard it. The sound of gravel shifting, footsteps following. Slow at first, then faster. My heart started pounding. I quickened my pace, trying not to look back. When I reached the door, I fumbled with the key, my hands shaking. The footsteps broke into a sprint. I shoved the key into the lock and twisted just as the man reached the door. I slammed it shut behind me, flipping the deadbolt as he grabbed the handle. The door rattled violently. "Mark!" I shouted. "Mark, wake up!" He groaned, still half asleep. "Mark, I'm serious! Someone's out there!" Bang! 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 The door shook with each hit. My pulse thudded in my ears. I backed up, grabbed the lamp from the nightstand, holding it like a weapon. The pounding went on for what felt like forever. Then just as suddenly it stopped. The silence that followed was worse. I held my breath, staring at the door. Then came something even more chilling. A slow, deliberate scrape against the wood, like a fingernail dragging from top to bottom. I didn't move, didn't breathe. After a few seconds, footsteps retreated, fading into the night. When the first light of dawn bled through the curtains, I was still sitting up, lamp in hand. Mark stretched and yawned. Man, I slept great. I stared at him. You didn't hear that? He blinked. Hear what? Someone tried to break in last night. He was pounding on the door for 5 minutes straight. Mark laughed. You're kidding. Dude, you probably dreamed it. You've been running on no sleep. I know what I heard, I snapped. He just shook his head, smirking. Whatever you say, man. Let's grab breakfast. I stepped outside, my heart still racing. The gravel was disturbed near the door, footprints leading away toward the woods. But something else caught my eye. The vending machine. Its glass was cracked, and the coin return tray was hanging open. There were scratch marks all over the side, like someone had been clawing at it. I told Mark, but he just laughed it off. We left a few minutes later, the clerk not even looking up as we dropped the key on the counter. As I pulled out of the lot, I caught sight of the woods behind the motel in the rearview mirror. For a split second, I could have sworn I saw a figure standing at the tree line. Tall, thin, watching. Mark turned up the radio, humming along, completely oblivious. I didn't tell him what I saw. I just kept driving until the sign for Eagle's Rest disappeared behind us. That was the last road trip I ever took with him. And to this day, whenever I see an old motel off the highway, one with a flickering neon sign and empty parking lot, I feel that same cold weight in my chest. Because I still hear that sound sometimes in my dreams, the scrape against the door. Story 6, I never thought I'd ever call a motel home. But back in 2016, life didn't exactly give us much of a choice. My name's Evan McLean, and at the time I was 15, caught in that awkward age where you're old enough to understand how bad things really are, but too young to do anything about it. We just sold our old house in Springfield, Missouri, faster than expected. The new place my dad bought, a fixer-upper in Ridgeway, wasn't ready yet. Contractors were behind, plumbing wasn't finished, and the bank kept delaying paperwork. My dad had just started a new job out there too, and money was thinner than I'd ever seen it. So instead of crashing with relatives and bouncing between couches, my parents made a decision. We'd stay at a budget extended stay motel for a few weeks. It was called Ridgeway Inn and Suites, a 2-story rectangle of faded beige paint, tucked behind a gas station and a closed-down diner. The kind of place where the pool had been empty for years, where cigarette burns scarred the railings, and where the vending machines ate your $9 times out of 10. It wasn't exactly a dream, but it was home for now. Our room had 2 queen beds, a small kitchenette, and carpet that always smelled like a mix of bleach and old smoke, no matter how many times the maids cleaned. The TV was ancient, and the air conditioner rattled every time it kicked on, but it kept us cool during those humid summer nights. My mom, Janet, tried to keep things normal. She'd cook simple dinners on a single electric burner, boxed mac and cheese, grilled cheese sandwiches, canned soup. My dad, Ron, worked long hours at a freight company, coming home exhausted, collapsing onto the bed, his boots leaving little dust trails on the floor. And then there was my little sister, Lila, 9 years old and always humming some song from whatever Disney show she was obsessed with that week. She didn't seem to mind the place. To her, it was like living in a hotel, a never-ending sleepover. But for me, it was strange. There was something about that motel that didn't sit right. At first, I thought it was just the transience of it all. Every few days, new cars would pull in and out of the parking lot. Families came and went, construction workers left before dawn, and the lot always had at least one car that looked like it hadn't moved in months. But then I realized, not everyone was temporary. Some people lived there, like Mr. Dorsey, the older guy in room 104 who always sat outside smoking and feeding stray cats. He told me once he'd been there for about 11 years. There was Tina, a single mom 2 doors down from us who worked nights at the diner off Route 72. She'd been there 6. And kids my age actually got on a school bus every morning right outside the motel driveway. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just a motel. It was its own strange little world, a halfway home between normal life and nowhere. But for all its weirdness, Ridgeway Inn felt safe, routine even, until that night. It was a Thursday in late August, sticky and hot, and my dad was working the graveyard shift. Mom had just finished folding laundry in the room, and Lila was asleep on the other bed, clutching her stuffed rabbit. I was sitting beside Mom, both of us in our pajamas, watching reruns of Friends with the volume low. We were talking about the new house, how nice it'd be to finally move in, how she wanted to paint the kitchen yellow, when we heard it. At first it was faint, just a door slamming, then another. Footsteps, a man yelling somewhere down the hall. Mom muted the TV. "Did you hear that?" "Yeah," I sat up a little. "Sounds like someone's arguing." The voices grew sharper, angry. Then came a woman's voice crying. It wasn't the usual motel noise. Then came a deep, commanding voice that cut through everything. "Police! Open the door!" 3 hard bangs followed. Bang, bang, bang! My heart jumped into my throat. Mom froze, eyes wide. "Don't open the door," she whispered. I crept to the peephole. My stomach dropped instantly. There was a cop outside, real uniform, badge shining under the dim hallway light. His expression was tense. Behind him I saw the shadow of another officer, then flashing blue from somewhere outside. I cracked the door just an inch, keeping the chain on. Yes?" The officer leaned close. His voice was calm but urgent. "Ma'am, sir, we need you to evacuate immediately. There's a situation in progress." Mom's voice trembled. "What's happening?" He shook his head. "Can't give details right now. Please grab what you need and move quickly." Then he moved to the next door, pounding again. Mom didn't hesitate this time. "Evan, get dressed." Now we scrambled. I threw on jeans and a hoodie, pulled on sneakers with no socks. Mom grabbed her purse and Lila's backpack. We didn't even take toothbrushes. When we stepped outside, the hallway was chaos. Doors flew open. People poured out, half-dressed, disoriented, carrying kids, bags, pets. Someone was crying. A man shouted, "What the hell's going on?" "Move it, folks!" Another officer yelled. "Let's go! Move toward the parking lot!" The air was heavy with panic and the sharp stench of adrenaline and sweat. Mom clutched Lila's hand. "Stay close, Evan." We moved with the crowd down the stairs through the narrow corridor that opened into the parking lot. That's when I saw just how serious it was. The entire lot was lit up with red and blue lights. At least 10 police cars surrounded the building. A white van with crisis negotiation unit painted on the side had just pulled in. News crews were already setting up across the street. "What's happening?" someone behind me asked. "I heard it's a bomb," a woman said, clutching a toddler. "No, it's a hostage thing," another man whispered. Nobody knew. The rumors spread faster than the truth. Mom tried to get an answer out of a cop near the perimeter. "Please, officer, my little girl, can you just tell us what's happening?" He barely looked at her. "Ma'am, please stay back from the building. For your safety." And that was it. We were left standing in the parking lot, confused and terrified, staring at our temporary home lit up like a crime scene. Hours passed. We were told nothing. Not where to go, not when we could come back. Some families huddled by their cars. Others sat on the curb. A few people were crying. The sound of radios, static, and distant shouts carried across the lot. By midnight, the news vans had multiplied. Reporters whispered into cameras. I overheard phrases like standoff, armed suspects, and possible hostages. I looked at Mom, who was trying to keep Lila calm. "We'll be fine," she kept saying, more to herself than to us. Around 1 a.m., one of our neighbors, Charlene, offered to drive me to McDonald's since I hadn't eaten all day. "You look pale, kid." "Come on," Mom hesitated, but finally nodded. "Okay, but don't be long." The drive-through Ridgeway felt surreal. The golden arches glowed against the dark sky, and everything felt wrong, like the world had tilted slightly off balance. While I picked at fries, Charlene sighed. "You know, this ain't the first time, right?" "What do you mean?" "Cops been here plenty before. Last summer, they pulled a guy out of room 215. Meth, guns, the whole bit. You get used to it." I looked at her, speechless. "People live like that?" She shrugged. "Honey, some folks got nowhere else to go." By 3 a.m., Dad arrived, face drawn with worry. "Are you all okay?" "We're fine," Mom said softly. "They still won't let us back in." We ended up sitting on the curb near the main road. It was cold by then. People started dozing off in cars. Lila wrapped herself in Mom's jacket. Sometime around 5 a.m., Dad said quietly. We're leaving. We'll go to your cousin's, Mom didn't argue. We packed into his car and drove through the dark streets of Ridgeway to Aunt Clara's apartment. She opened the door in her robe, eyes wide with shock. Oh my God, what happened? Mom just shook her head. We don't even know. We slept on her living room floor that night. I barely closed my eyes. Every time I drifted off, I'd see the flashing lights again, hear the shouting, feel the cold air on my skin. The next morning, the truth came out. News reports said it had been a 12-hour standoff. A young couple, early 20s, had barricaded themselves in a room on the second floor. They had outstanding warrants for armed robbery and assault, and when officers came to arrest them, they refused to come out. They'd threatened to hurt themselves if police entered. So they waited. No hostages, no bombs. Just two desperate, scared people who didn't want their lives to end behind bars. At 10 a.m., after hours of negotiation, they finally surrendered. No shots fired, no one hurt. By the time the Ridgeway Inn reopened, half the long-term residents had already packed up and left, including us. When we finally moved into our new house a week later, everything felt different. I'd look out my window at night and think about those flashing lights, about the sound of that cop pounding on the door, about the way fear had settled into everyone's faces. That night changed how I saw people, and safety. I used to think fear came from horror movies, ghosts, monsters in closets. But it's not. It's the knock on your door at midnight. It's the sound of police shouting down a hallway you thought you knew. It's realizing danger doesn't always come from somewhere far away. It can be just a few doors down. Even now, whenever I drive past a glowing motel sign on some empty highway, I feel that same chill crawl up my spine, because I know what it's like to be yanked out of sleep, barefoot on cold pavement, wondering if you'll make it home again. That night at Ridgeway Inn was the first time I truly understood how fragile normal life really is. Story 7. I never thought a flooded ceiling in my apartment would push me into one of the scariest nights of my life. My name's Noah Green. I'm 32 years old and I live in Fort Collins, Colorado. I work as a parts clerk at a local mechanic shop, a job that pays the bills but doesn't exactly make life comfortable. My apartment building was old, built sometime in the 60s, and half the time the heat didn't work right. I'd been thinking of moving for months, but with rent prices going up, I figured I'd just tough it out until I had more saved. Then 2 weeks ago, a pipe burst in the ceiling above my kitchen. I came home from work to find water pouring down like rain, pooling across the floor. Maintenance showed up late, shut the water off, and told me they'd need to open the ceiling and check for possible asbestos exposure. Sure enough, the inspection that followed confirmed the worst. There was asbestos in the old ceiling insulation. That meant everyone on my floor had to move out immediately. The property manager handed out vouchers for temporary motel housing until the repairs were done. I didn't really have family nearby, and my friends were either married or had roommates, so I took the voucher and tried not to complain. It was supposed to be for no more than 10 days. That's how I ended up at the Sunset Pines Motor Inn, a 2-story roadside motel about 15 miles south of town, near the edge of Loveland. It was early October around 6:30 p.m. when I pulled into the cracked asphalt lot. The air had that crisp bite to it that told you fall was finally settling in. The sky was gray-orange, the kind of light that makes everything look a little sad. The motel looked like it hadn't seen a coat of paint in years. The vacancy sign flickered with a dull red buzz. A few bulbs burned out. The front doors were smudged and a faint smell of stale cigarettes hung in the air. Inside, the lobby was exactly what I expected. Plastic ferns, a humming soda machine, a rack of dusty pamphlets advertising things like cave tours and antique malls. The carpet had that dark stain pattern motels use to hide how dirty it really is. Behind the front desk was a middle-aged woman with bleached blonde hair tied in a ponytail. Her name tag read Marla. She was scrolling through her phone when I walked in. "Evening," she said without looking up. "Checking in. Yeah, through the city housing program. Name's Noah Green." That got her attention. She typed something on the old desktop computer, nodding. "Yep, gotcha here. Room 12, ground floor, back wing." She slid a key card across the counter. Wi-Fi passwords taped to the nightstand. Ice machines near the vending area. "Thanks," I said. As I turned to leave, the automatic doors hissed open behind me, and that's when I first saw him. A man in a dark gray hoodie stepped in, head slightly down, hands in his pockets. He didn't look homeless, but something about him felt off. His clothes were clean but wrinkled, and his face was pale, with deep-set eyes that didn't seem to focus on anything in particular. He didn't go to the desk. He just walked slowly past me, glancing sideways. Not a normal glance either. It lingered, long enough that I felt my stomach tighten. Marla gave him a wary look. "Can I help you, sir?" The man didn't answer. He kept walking until he reached the corner of the lobby, then turned and sat down on one of the old leather chairs, staring straight ahead at nothing. Marla looked at me, rolling her eyes like, "Great, another one." I gave a small, awkward smile and grabbed my key card. "Have a good night," I said. "You too, hun," she replied. "Don't mind the weirdos. Lot of drifters pass through here." I tried to laugh it off, but the way the guy had looked at me stuck in my head. My room was at the far end of the back wing, facing a small patch of dry grass and a broken fence. The door squeaked when I opened it, and the first thing I noticed was the smell, like old carpet cleaner and faint mildew. The room was small but tidy. Single bed, tiny table, dresser, a flat-screen TV that looked 5 years outdated. I tossed my bag on the bed and sat down, scrolling through my phone to distract myself. It had been a long day and all I wanted was to rest. Around 7:30, I decided to grab something from the vending machine by the lobby. As I walked outside, I noticed the air had turned colder, and the parking lot was almost empty except for a few trucks and sedans. The vending area was lit by a flickering light, casting a faint buzzing sound. I grabbed a soda, and as I turned around, I froze. The man from the lobby was standing about 30 feet away, near the stairwell, just standing there facing me. I tried to act casual. "Hey," I said, "you need something?" He didn't respond. He just tilted his head slightly, as if listening to something behind me, and whispered something I couldn't quite make out. Then, as quietly as he'd appeared, he walked away toward the far corner of the lot, disappearing into the dark. I exhaled slowly, heart pounding harder than I wanted to admit. Back in my room, I tried to brush it off. Maybe he was just another guest. Maybe I'd overreacted. But when I tried to sleep later that night, I couldn't shake the image of those blank eyes. Sometime after midnight, I woke to a noise, a soft metallic click. At first, I thought it was just the heater kicking on. Then I realized it was coming from the door. I sat up, my eyes adjusting to the dim orange light from the parking lot outside. The noise came again. Click, scrape, click, like someone trying a key that didn't quite fit. I swung my legs off the bed and grabbed the small lamp from the nightstand. "Who's there?" I called out. My voice came out rough, shaky. Silence. Then just above a whisper came a voice from the other side of the door. "Why'd you lock it?" Every muscle in my body went tight. "Who is that?" I said. The voice came again, low, calm, and eerily familiar. "You shouldn't lock the door, Noah. Friends don't do that." My chest felt like it collapsed inward. "How do you know my name?" No answer. I stumbled for the motel phone, dialing the front desk. Marla picked up, her voice groggy. "Front desk. There's someone outside my room," I hissed. "He's trying to get in." "Room 12. "Oh, what?" "Okay, hold on. Don't open the door. I'll send our night guard over." "Hurry," I whispered. The sound stopped for a few seconds, and I thought maybe whoever it was had gone. Then a slow knock, 3 times, followed by a whisper that made my skin crawl. "I just want to come in and talk." I backed toward the corner, gripping the lamp tighter. "Leave or I'm calling the cops," I shouted. But he didn't leave. He started to laugh softly, like a quiet exhale, then said, "You shouldn't have looked at me in the lobby. You made it personal, that was it." I grabbed my phone and called 911. The dispatcher asked my name and location. Before I could finish explaining, I heard a loud bang on the door, one that made it rattle on its hinges. The dispatcher told me to stay on the line. I heard footsteps outside, then voices, one male, one female. "Sir!" "Step away from the door." That must have been the motel security and Marla. I pressed my eye to the peephole just in time to see 2 people in uniforms cornering the man in the hoodie near the stairwell. He was muttering fast, his hands twitching. Then suddenly, he bolted. He ran straight across the lot into the dark, past the trees that lined the back fence. The guards chased after him for a few seconds but stopped when they realized he'd vanished. I stayed awake until the sun came up. Every time a car door slammed outside, my heart jumped. In the morning, I packed my things. I didn't care about the voucher. I just wanted out. When I checked out, Marla looked drained. "Sheriff's deputies came last night," she said quietly. "They looked around, but he was gone by the time they got here." Did he say anything?" I asked. She frowned, lowering her voice. "When our guard first saw him, he was talking to himself. Said something about the man with his eyes. Then he started laughing." I swallowed hard. "Does that mean anything to you?" she asked. I shook my head, but my stomach turned. "No," I said. "No idea." I left the motel around 8 a.m., the sunlight cutting through the thin fog. I kept glancing in my rearview mirror the whole drive back to town. That night, when I finally settled into my temporary unit, I unpacked my bag and found something I knew I hadn't packed. A folded piece of motel stationery. On it, written in shaky handwriting, were 5 words. "I can still see you." I didn't sleep at all that night. And even now, weeks later, every time I walk past a window after dark, I catch myself looking for a reflection that isn't mine. Because I swear, sometimes, just for a second, I see a man in a gray hoodie, standing there, smiling. Story 8, I never planned on working the night shift forever. Back then, it was just supposed to be a way to keep the lights on. My name's Evan Miller, and for the past 3 years, I've been the overnight clerk at the Pine Hollow Motel, a faded budget place off Route 19 outside Joplin, Missouri. When I first took the job, I'd just been laid off from a manufacturing plant in Carthage. The company was downsizing, and after 8 years of putting bolts into sheet metal, I got a handshake, a final paycheck, and a good luck. I didn't have savings, didn't have a degree, and didn't have many options. The motel job came from a Craigslist ad: overnight desk clerk, quiet location, low traffic, must be okay working alone. That last part, working alone, should have made me think twice. But I've always been the kind of guy who prefers quiet. I'm 33 now, single, and not exactly swimming in social energy. The motel was a place where the world slowed down. No bosses breathing down my neck. No coworkers making small talk about fantasy football. Just me, a pot of burnt coffee, and the hum of vending machines. The first few months weren't bad. Nights were predictable. The same tired faces checking in. The same drunks stumbling through after the bars closed. The same sound of semis roaring past on the highway. I used to think of Pine Hollow as a kind of halfway point between everywhere and nowhere. A place people only came to disappear for a night. But sometimes people don't just disappear when they leave. Some of them linger in the air, in your head, in the shadows caught by those flickering lobby cameras. And there's one night in particular I can't shake, one that still crawls into my dreams. It happened on a Thursday in late October. That night started like any other. I clocked in at 10:45 p.m., the usual dead quiet greeting me as I walked into the lobby. The Pine Hollow isn't fancy: 12 rooms, a vending machine that eats more quarters than it should, a coffee pot that tastes like it's been through a few wars, and a flickering neon sign out front that hums like a trapped fly. The day clerk, Marcy, was already halfway out the door when I came in. "Nothing crazy tonight," she said, grabbing her purse. "Room 8 needed extra towels and room 3's heater's acting up again." "Got it," I said. "Oh, and Evan," she paused by the door. "You might want to check the security feed. Somebody's been leaving cigarette butts by the dumpster out back. Could be a homeless guy." I nodded, half listening. We'd had a few drifters wander through lately, but they never caused much trouble. By midnight, the motel was still. Only 2 guests had checked in, an older couple traveling to Oklahoma and a long-haul trucker named Phil, who parked his rig across 3 spaces. I made myself a cup of coffee, the kind that smells like burnt cardboard, and sat in the back office scrolling through my phone. The air was heavy with that stale detergent scent all motels have, mixed with the faint hum of the soda machine outside the door. At 3:07 a.m., everything changed. I noticed him first on the monitor. We've got 6 security cameras, 2 in the lobby, 1 over the parking lot, 1 pointed at the vending machines, and a couple out by the rooms. The screens sit stacked on a shelf, glowing in the dark like tired eyes. That night, one of those eyes blinked. The parking lot feed flickered, then cleared, and there he was. A man was walking across the lot toward the lobby. Something about his movement made my stomach tighten. He wasn't staggering, but he wasn't steady either. Each step looked like an effort, like he was reminding his body how to move. His shoulders hunched, his head tilted slightly down. Even through the grainy footage, I could see his eyes, wide, unblinking, fixed dead ahead at the door. I pushed my chair back and stood up, trying to shake off the unease. Probably just another drunk, I muttered to myself. By the time he reached the glass doors, I was behind the front desk, straightening my polo and forcing a polite smile. The door chimed as he came in, and the temperature in the lobby seemed to dip. He was maybe mid-50s, gray hair thinning, a week's worth of stubble on his face. His clothes were worn, a brown jacket that looked too small and jeans darkened around the knees. But his eyes, they were too sharp, too awake for someone stumbling in off the highway. "Evening," I said, keeping my tone even. "You looking for a room tonight?" He froze about 5 feet from the counter. His eyes never blinked. Then, in a flat, almost childlike voice, he asked, "Why are you so nervous?" The words landed like a drop of cold water down my spine. I gave a small chuckle, trying to diffuse it. "I'm not nervous, sir. Just a long night." "You need a room." He tilted his head slightly, bird-like. His lips trembled, but his tone stayed calm. "Why is everybody so nervous all the time?" "What's going on here?" I forced a smile. "Can't say, sir. Just me here. You want to check in or not?" He stared at me for several seconds, too long, before digging into his jacket pocket. My pulse jumped when his hand disappeared inside. I instinctively stepped back, ready to bolt into the office if he pulled anything out. After what felt like forever, he produced a battered wallet. He slid an ID and credit card across the counter. The ID read, Harold Denton, local address. The photo looked 10 years younger, but the face matched. The card's edges were frayed, the plastic peeling. While I typed his info into the computer, I could feel his stare. My hands trembled slightly on the keyboard. Then he pointed to the corner of the lobby. "Who designed that table?" I didn't look. I knew the move. Distraction, misdirection. You turn and they strike. Without taking my eyes off him, I said quietly, "Sir, I need you to step back, please." He smiled. It was faint, uneven, but his teeth were yellow and wet. Then almost theatrically, he flipped his wallet open again. Inside, tucked behind a few cards, was a small badge. He tilted it toward me. "You see this? Everything's fine here, right? You're okay. Nobody's hurting you." My stomach dropped. The badge looked real enough. Police. County issue, maybe. But his tone, it was wrong. Mocking. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Sir, I need you to leave the property." He didn't move. That's when I noticed it. A dark stain spreading down his pant leg. A second later, the smell hit me. Sharp, ammonia, unmistakable. He'd pissed himself, and he didn't even seem to notice. He leaned forward, eyes wide, voice trembling now. "Why are you scared? Who's making you scared?" That broke me. I slipped back toward the office, my heart pounding. Once the door was shut and locked, I stared at the monitors. He just stood there for nearly a full minute, motionless. Then he turned toward the lobby couch, muttered something, and wandered back outside. I exhaled, shaking. My hands were still trembling when I reached for the phone and dialed the local police. While I was on the line with dispatch, the man didn't leave. On the cameras, I watched him pacing the parking lot, moving between cars like he couldn't remember which one was his. Then he stopped, turned, and looked directly at the camera. It wasn't an accident. He knew exactly where it was, and even through the static and blur, I swear he smiled. A few seconds later, headlights washed across the lot as another guest pulled in. Some college kid waiting for a ride. The kid sat down on the bench outside the office, earbuds in, head down. The man Harold turned toward him. I froze. I grabbed the mic for the outside speaker and said sharply, "Hey, you kid, get inside." He looked up, confused. Before I could say more, Harold shuffled closer to him. I couldn't hear what he said. but I saw the kid's face drain of color. He stood, grabbed his backpack, and moved toward the door. I cracked it open an inch. "You okay?" I asked. "Man," he whispered, he's off." He asked if I was scared of him. "Go wait by the vending machines. Police are on their way," I said. He nodded and hurried off. 5 minutes later, the red and blue lights washed over the parking lot. 2 patrol cars rolled in. Officer Langley, who'd been to the motel a few times before for noise complaints, came up to the window. "Talk to me, Evan," he said. I told him everything. How the guy came in, what he said, the badge, the smell, the stare. Langley nodded, called it in. A few minutes later, his partner's radio crackled. "Unit 4, got your subject. Older male, DUI, stop across the street at the Days Inn." Copy that. Langley gave me a short nod. "Looks like your guy didn't make it far." Relief washed over me, but it didn't last. Later, after the officers cleared the scene, one of them came back with an update. The badge was real. Harold Denton wasn't just some drunk pretending to be a cop. He had been one, a retired sheriff's deputy from a small county south of us. No outstanding warrants, no record, just broken. The report said he'd been living alone since his wife died 2 years ago. Neighbors said he'd started talking to himself. They found empty bottles in his car, and when they asked why he'd gone to the motel, he just repeated the same thing. They're all scared. Everybody's scared. For a while, I tried to shake it off, told myself he was just another lost soul cracked by time and liquor. But the unease stayed. A few nights later, I went through the security footage again. I don't even know why I did it. Maybe I was looking for closure. Maybe I was hoping to prove I'd imagined how weird it felt. But around the 3:07 a.m. mark, when Harold first appeared on the lot, I noticed something. He didn't come from the highway. He didn't pull up in a car. He walked in from the tree line behind the dumpster. There's no road back there, just woods that stretch for a quarter mile until they hit the river. Even stranger, for a split second before he stepped fully into the camera's view, another figure seemed to move behind him. A flicker, like someone stepping back into the darkness. When I paused and rewound, the screen glitched, and the timestamp flicked from 3:07:12 to 3:07:09, as if the footage had looped. I tried to tell myself it was just compression error, but then I remembered what Marcy said that evening, about the cigarette butts by the dumpster. Someone had been out there before that night, someone waiting. A week later, Marcy quit, said she couldn't shake a bad feeling about the place. "You ever notice how quiet it gets around 3? She'd asked me before leaving, and she was right. The silence around that hour isn't like normal quiet. It's heavier, pressing, like the world's holding its breath. Now I still work there. Bills don't pay themselves, but I've changed my routine. At 3 a.m., I make sure all the lights are on. I lock the office door. I keep my phone in hand, because sometimes, even now when the cameras flicker, I see movement near the dumpster. Just a shape, just a shadow. And once, just once, I caught a glimpse of a man's face in the reflection of the glass door. Eyes wide, unblinking. Lips mouthing the same words I'll never forget. "Why are you so nervous?"